Hello, everyone. My name is Shashi Tripathi, chair of our Global Indian Institute of Technology Conference 2026, to be held in Long Beach, California, from April 22nd through 25th of this year. Um, the theme of the conference is Innovate, Ignite, and Thrive. We have four tracks: artificial intelligence, health sustainability, investment, and global connect. We are expecting 2,500 people in this beautiful coastal town. And it's my absolute pleasure to have Ashutosh Padhi. He's a senior partner at McKinsey. He himself is IITian. Um, uh, Many accolades, amazing leader to talk about technology, AI, innovation. We have series of questions, but even before I start, let's hear him from himself, Ashutosh, who Ashutosh Padhi is.
Sashi, great to be with you. Thank you again for inviting me onto this. This one is deeply personal for me. I think I grew up in Orissa. I was the youngest of four kids, and my dad was in the government. For me, growing up, there was a dream, which is to actually get into IIT Kanpur. And I remember in those days actually going through I think there were like brilliant tutorials or something. And then they started to talk about target IIT and then planning for IIT. There used to be a couple of these tutorials at that point in time. And to me, this was really a defining moment, being able to get into IIT. And from there, I joined business school, and then I joined McKinsey. And for me, the way I look at this is a real opportunity to be able to. I've always viewed each of these as opportunities for learning and development. And most importantly, at McKinsey, an opportunity to also make a positive difference. We do it through working with brilliant colleagues, through being able to serve institutions, leaders that matter on topics that really, really matter. And then also from the standpoint of thought leadership around topics that really, really matter.
Yep. No, thank you so much, Ashutosh. You have amazingly great career. I looked through your profile, and you yourself, Ashutosh, have worked on the intersection of strategy, transformation, even to the country level scale and change. Looking back, what do you think is the experience which has shaped your leadership philosophy and who Ashutosh is today?
So it actually goes back to, I think, I would say there have been multiple points in my career where I think it got shaped, right? And I'll pick three, maybe the early moments in our career. And I'll stay with the early. We can come back to the later stages of my career. Early on, IIT Kanpur was actually quite defining because I showed
Hmm.
up in IIT and I realized I was never ever going to be the smartest kid in the room. I could never be that person at all. So how
We
do
all realize that.
you quickly realize that on day one, right? And I think you could
Uh-huh.
come to peace with that and say, that doesn't make you less capable of being able to make a difference, but how do you actually make a difference? When I joined business school, I grew up in a state where I think mostly the world that I was exposed to was the state governments, and I did not understand the role of the private sector. And when I went to business school 93 to 95, which was the point at which India was liberalizing. That's the point at which I really started to understand the role and importance of the private sector in being able to lift not just institutions but communities and countries. And I think that for me, to me was a transforming moment. And then I joined McKinsey, and one of the things I learned was this idea about what does it mean to actually, in McKinsey parlance, I think sometimes people call this a leadership factory. I think in McKinsey we talk about this and say our ability to develop people, typically every year in McKinsey, should be worth 2 to 3 years of development relative to what it is in a typical similar role in industry. How does that happen, right? Through feedback, through learning, through mentorship, and so on. So I was the beneficiary of that early on in my career. And right now, part of what I'm doing is to say, how do I work side by side with colleagues to be able to actually help shape and make them more successful, right? That in itself is an objective, not as a byproduct of what we do.
Take one of the elephant in the room. Many people are talking about AI is taking away jobs, especially consulting company. I know McKinsey has taken a very different approach um, in this new world. Whatever public knowledge you can share, can you share with us how McKinsey is adopting, and not just McKinsey, but any consulting company adopting in this new world where I would say there's a lot of myth out there, but there are some reality to it that AI is replacing job, and we all have to change our career, our company, our business model, the way we operated in the past. How McKinsey is doing it, and any advice, thoughts you have for any consulting companies?
So, Sashi, I think there is a lot in that question. So let me perhaps unpack, right?
Please.
First, let me start by saying AI is going to be the most transformative force that any of us has seen in our lifetimes. We are now, as they said, the first bounce of the ball. What we are seeing is already very impressive, and I think it's only going to compound from here. From a McKinsey standpoint, we have been at we have our posture has been is to embrace AI and use that to shape what we do rather than fight AI. Right, that
Mm-hmm.
has been the crux of our posture. What does that mean on a practical basis? That means that anyone who joins McKinsey today, even at the recruiting stage, I think one of the things we test for is the AI aptitude. When our folks join McKinsey, I think they go through a significant amount of training around how to start to use AI in the day-to-day jobs. Each one of us has now been trained up, including myself. I have my own set of agents, AI agents, that I use in the course of my day-to-day work. If you look at a lot of how we work inside McKinsey, whether it's evaluations, whether it's recruiting, etc., we're starting to use AI on a pretty regular basis. How I prepare for a client meeting today is actually different. Earlier, I would have to have someone work together to prepare a perspective on the company and the industry. Today, I use AI to generate the first version of that within seconds, and then I spend time to reflect on it and say, how do I make it better? From the standpoint of our client service, actually, we feel very fortunate and very lucky. Um, the role that we are focused on solving is what I call as a 90% problem, which is 90% of the AI efforts so far have not delivered a lot of business value. And the role that uniquely as McKinsey we can play, companies have spent trillions of dollars over the last decade on technology, but they've not quite realized the benefits of technology. And the role that we are playing is to say, how do we help our clients actually realize that value? And that is leading to a number of changes in terms of our client service to our clients around how we're equipping them to do it. But net, we'd come back and say that for us as McKinsey, this is an opportunity. We are actually embracing something that we are very excited about.
Very cool. So Asutosh, you have a different lens, and I have a huge respect for McKinsey and what McKinsey does. And when you made the comment, AI is the biggest transformative force. Can you parse a little bit more for audience who may not be AI word, or maybe they are on the surface of AI? Give us more clarity about what do you mean by transformative force to human society?
It's a great, Sashi, it's a great question. If you go back and look at, let's say, let's pull back for a second. Let's look over the last 20 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
Well, these ideas of what we call as general purpose technologies that have broad-based impact, right?
Mm-hmm.
A
Mm-hmm.
couple of examples of what things that we did not know about. If I go back, let's say we were sitting in 1993, when I graduated from IIT, things we do not know about but are today are commonplace. I would say the internet is one of those, right? Mobile is another one of those. I would put AI in the same bucket. These are
Mm-hmm.
broad-based technologies that are very disruptive, that were not things that had been thought about or factored in. But when they come in, the adoption rate and scale actually goes across the 9 billion users in the planet today, right? More than 6 to 7 billion people actually using the internet. Many of them are using the mobile. And part of what happens here is it starts to create applications and uses that people had not foreseen. So if you look at AI, for example, our view here is that I think there's a lot of concern today around automation of tasks, will it change jobs, et cetera, et cetera. All of that is valid. I think we need to understand that. We need to manage that. It'll actually happen faster. But I think the possibilities are also going to be how can we use AI to solve the problems that we don't even know could be solved today, right? Like when can we start to use AI for drug discovery? How do we use AI to change our healthcare systems? How do we use AI to think about space exploration differently, et cetera? So I think it's going to take us down a whole set of frontiers and applications that we cannot even imagine sitting here today. But when we look at it, if you and I were having this conversation 20 years down the road, we would say, well, all of those things have now become commonplace.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true. Very true. Um, Asutosh, you have a unique place where you speak to various industries, you speak to various government organizations, various leaders. What are you hearing from them about use of AI and adoption and transformation? Love to hear your thoughts.
I'm hearing two things about AI. The first is there is a big discussion on is this a bubble or
Yep.
is this reality?
Mm-hmm.
Second is, I think, the 90% problem that I talked about, which is this is all great. Everyone is talking about it. Even I'm using like, Chat GPT or Anthropic or whatever else, take your favorite, or Gemini. But I do not yet know how to take this and drive it and use it in a way that drives a set of results in my, I don't see it in my bottom line. Those are kind of the two dominant things that I continue to hear.
So, can you talk a little bit more about AI, is AI bubble or AI the reality? What's your viewpoint?
So first, I'll start by saying it's one of the most important and interesting questions for us. Um,
Yes.
as we look at most of the general purpose technologies like AI, they often go through a phase where we all get really excited by the potential. There's a phase of massive investment that follows. It likely results in some kind of an overbuild of capacity, and then there's a quote unquote a bubble that bursts, then it returns to normalcy. But over a period of time, the returns from that become very, very clear. From the standpoint of AI, I think you've heard Jensen and others talk about the fact that we'll probably see $6 or $7 trillion of investment between now and 2030. Obviously, to be able to you take that magnitude of investment and say, where are the returns for that going to come from? And if those returns don't materialize, then what is the business case for this? So my sense of this is that if you look at it, I think first and foremost, AI is real. Second, my belief is that realizing outcomes, business outcomes, and starting to realize the ROI on those magnitude of investments and all, I think will actually start to happen. In fact, I believe we might actually be getting to the tipping point here. So far, we've seen very little. If you look at 2025, when you ask the question, we had a record third quarter in the US, 3.7% GDP growth. And there's a lot of discussion around has the AI kind of hype bubble contributed to that? The answer is no, right? That was practically zero. But I'm increasingly getting more and more confident that starting in 2026, 2027, we'll start to see the productivity advantages that AI is contributing start to factor into the GDP and so on. So hopefully we'll start to see the returns. But with like every other general purpose technologies, I have no doubt about the fact that we will overshoot and then correct, but eventually get to a point where the world is going to look very, very different than what it was before the technology.
No, perfect. And I'll dive even further more into this thing you talked about, where roughly $6 trillion investment into AI. From your perspective, Asutosh, and you are again perfect candidate to answer this. What area, top two, three area, even within AI, is it infra layer? Is it LLM layer? Is it agentic? Is it AGI? Is it the security? Is it the human aspect? What area do you see, maybe top two, three, where those $6 trillion are going to be allocated towards?
So the current estimate, Sashi, is that out of the $6 to $7 trillion, about half of it is going to be going towards semiconductors, towards chips. Another 15 or 20% will go towards the buildup of the data centers, right? I think. And then there is all kinds of estimates on the balance part of it, like adjacencies and so on. Again, it's very hard at this point of time to be very predictive about whether that scale of investment can continue and so on and so forth. But that's roughly the contours of where the money is expected to, where the investments are going today.
How do you view about I hear I'm tracking AI quite a bit, by the way. I do my investment in AI. I've done 40% of my investment in AI. And when I talk to various companies and audience, and they are skeptical about the privacy, the security, and I'm sure you are hearing it too. What is your viewpoint, and based on all the learnings you have gathered so far around this topic, security and privacy?
I think there are, it's that like with every other big technology like this, there are two or three big rocks that haven't been fully solved. You talked about privacy as being one of those. I'd add to that there is cyber is another one,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Particularly when we start to trip into the world of quantum, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is other things around sovereignty, national sovereignty, data sovereignty, for example. So I
Mm-hmm.
look at this and say we are still very much in the early phases of this, early innings, as they would say. And therefore, I think that there are a number of these problems that are known problems, that are difficult problems that need to be solved. Now, each one of them will have to be worked through individually. I think, nothing that cannot be solved, but it'll take time and effort. It requires a combination of technology, it requires a combination of policy, it requires a combination of innovation and so on to be able to solve these problems.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. So changing the topic, maybe moving away from AI, what other element, and AI is everywhere now, and you're talking about McKinsey leading various transformation. Besides AI, what other area you see as part of that transformation, Asutosh?
I'd say this, today when you talk to CEOs, I think the other big theme you hear about is geopolitics.
Yeah.
Geopolitics, and of course, the two also will tend to intersect at many different points in time.
Mm-hmm.
But if I look at my discussions with CEOs around the world, there are a set of what I'd call as timeless topics, meaning topics that always come up. It's always linked to value creation. It's always linked to talent and leadership. It's always
Mm-hmm.
related to like board and how to work effectively with boards. But the two topics in particular that I think have risen up in the agenda is AI and geopolitics.
Mm-hmm.
Geopolitics, I think the question is, what is this going to do to, like, how do you start to, if you look at and ask the question, the CEO the question, who owns the geopolitics agenda inside a company? The answer is no one, which means the
No,
CEO
yeah.
doesn't own it. And I think in a discussion with one of the semiconductor CEOs, when we were having a chat, we asked the question, how much of your company's value creation could be driven up or down by geopolitics? And the answer was as high as like 45%. So
Wow.
massive, massive needle mover for the institution itself. So part of what I think we as McKinsey, we launched a geopolitics practice about 12 months ago. And part of what we're trying to help our clients with is how do you think about what is the value creation thesis from geopolitics? What are the upsides? What are the downsides? Second, what are the set of like strategically, organizationally, and operationally, what do you need to do to be able to position the organization going forward? You cannot be predictive in terms of the actions to take, but I think in terms of being what we'd use the word resilient against a broad set of scenarios.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on this topic, geopolitical? Is it supply chain? Is it the policy? Is it government connection? What do you mean when you say geopolitical?
The way I would describe geopolitics is it's a confluence of many different factors, right? I think it has got on the one
Mm-hmm.
hand, the most visible description of that is all the discussions we are hearing today around tariffs. Uh,
Yep.
and I think the impact of there's a set of inputs around that, right? It leads to different types of trade agreements, for example, across different countries. Um, One of the things that I think we're looking at is the impact of technology and saying what does that actually do? Like, you look at the world today largely has two tech stacks. If I simplify dramatically, you've got a tech stack which is really largely the US, and you've got a tech stack that's largely the China. What does the rest of the world do in terms of the given how central AI and technology is becoming to the entire agenda? what does that actually do to to how you start to think about the organization? It has to do with supply chains, as you said. It also has to do with like all of your back office operations around where and how you're going to configure. It has to do
Mm-hmm.
with what you do with your R&D, what the global footprint for that is. So I think these tend to be very broad-based, and it is obviously company specific on what really matters. We wouldn't say that there's the same set of issues that applies to everyone. But there is, for each of the CEOs that we have worked with, I think we're seeing just as a broad range of issues and very broad cross-cutting set of issues to be worked through.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, and we have seen this, especially in 2025, how these things which you just talked about has changed the landscape for even the big companies. They have a struggle and they have not, if they have not adopted to it.
Yeah.
Um, you are also in a great position when you interview various CEOs. Um, what skill sets or traits, in your view, are getting obsolete? And what skills and traits in the leaders, especially the CEOs and CXOs, are very important in the coming decades?
So let me maybe answer that in two ways, right? I think one is the average, if you look at the half-life of a skill, of a particular skill set,
Mm-hmm.
the half-life of a skill set is actually getting to be shorter and shorter. So which means if you go back and say you learned a particular set of skills and it was going to be useful to you for like 7 to 10 years, a particular type, today that has fallen by at least 50% or so.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right. So I think the half-life of any useful skill is, the McKinsey Global Institute has done work on this, which is very interesting, which shows that this is shortening. And in other words, what really matters, therefore, is the ability, this idea of like learning how to learn, right? I think one of the things that we're realizing is it is always going to be the fastest learners are the people who are going to be able to win, not just personally, but collectively as an institution,
Mm.
right? That's the same thing that you see, for example, on geopolitics. That's what you see on AI. That's what you see like on multiple other topics. And therefore, this idea that how do you actually just be go in there prepared that it is going to be impossible to predict, but it's possible to learn. And what are the steps that you need to take to be learned to be able to position yourselves and the companies that you're leading to be the best, to be best positioned for the future. That's what I think we're emphasizing more and more with our clients now.
Two questions on the same topic. A young leader who is graduating right now and trying to get into the job force and job market, career, or entrepreneurship, what advice would you have for them first? And second, for a CXOs who is stable, running a job, running a big company, has a great life career-wise, what advice you would have for them? So two questions in the same topic.
So I think you've got the two ends of the spectrum there, right?
Yep.
For someone who's coming into the workforce today, we'd say, three things. One is you've got to learn how to use AI in your day-to-day work, right? I think it's a given. I don't think that's a choice, but you need to understand what that really means and how you use it. Second is this idea of going deep and learning how to make a difference, right?
Mhm.
I think this thing that it is not one of the things we talked about in McKinsey for a long time is this idea of a T-shaped consultant. And the idea of a T is that you can be relevant across a broad set of areas, but there's a particular area where you have something that we call the spike. This idea of the T shape for a learning in terms of the mindset to develop and recognizing that the shape of that T will also and the content of that T will change over time. That's, I think, the second thing I would say.
Amazing, amazingly. Uh, the technology, T-shape. That's great. Continue.
Mm. And then the third thing I would say is the importance of getting a couple of mentors. No matter how good you are, I think you go back and look at this, we always discuss this. No matter how good you are at a particular field, it is very tough to be able to do this on your own. And I think the importance of proactively developing a set of mentors that you can learn from, constantly be seeking advice from, to be able as you progress down. And who those mentors are will shift over time. But I think that's really, really important. If you're a CXO, on the other hand, if you go to the other end of the spectrum, I think mostly where we find people is I find two types of people. One are people who are like really eager and curious and want to learn. These are the people who are reading, who are going to different places, asking the question, what does the leading edge look like? What does the art of the possible look like? Asking, there's a lot of curiosity, there's a lot of humility, there is a lot of wanting to learn, right? And then you see as like, I think other people who believe that this whole thing is going to go away, I'd call that, being the ostrich, right? Put your head in the sand and believe that nothing is going to happen. And obviously you can see which category will survive over time. But I think this idea that, of again being able to be naturally curious, recognizing that practically a lot of the things that we had learned about, huge number of those things will change. Uh, but also being confident that I think the leadership skills that you've learned over time, how to lead institutions, the importance of vision, the importance of values, the importance of strategy, the importance of operating model, the importance of culture, all those things, right? All those things will get shaped by technology, but technology cannot replace them. Therefore, I think that's the role of leadership, to be able to lead institutions through that, staying true to that.
I often see this word rewiring the organization, coined by McKinsey. Uh, is this what you're talking about? Maybe explain a little bit more for audience. What do you mean by rewiring the organization?
So rewiring is a McKinsey term that we use to say, how do you help organizations get ready to not just survive, but thrive in a world of AI and technology?
Mm-hmm.
And often, I think, let me contrast that with what rewiring is not. Rewiring, what it is not is, okay, let's take a couple of tools and insert it into how we currently work today, right? That's the
Yes.
opposite. But
Yes.
as opposed to go back and say, what could the organization look like? Start to rethink this from a bit of a clean sheet basis and ask the question, like, this is what we look like today. What could it look like tomorrow? And then work backwards from there to say, how do we solve our customer problems in a fundamentally different way? What does it require around the type, nature and type of people that we need? What does it imply around how those people will work together? Where do they get organized? What kind of decision making? What kind of accountability? What kinds of technology will we need? Humans and agents working side by side. This idea of like the agentic part of AI, which has been a big transformation that we have seen in the last 12 months. How do you design an organization that is going to be successful in the agentic world? So all of those things are what we mean by rewiring the organization.
Cool. Asutosh, I mean, you have spoken and you continue to speak with business leaders across the world. What are one or two or three common themes you see in great leaders and those who are successfully navigating this pretty complicated change we all are going through?
The leaders that I see who I'm most impressed by are the leaders who are actually learning the fastest. I go back to the same idea again, like being
Mm-hmm.
the fastest learners. And I think approaching this from the standpoint of like curiosity, trying to understand how the world is going to be different. They're the folks who are actually experimenting the fastest,
Mm-hmm.
trying this out, being open to a whole range of outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
They are not afraid to be uh, proven wrong. At the same time, there's a number of what I'd call timeless leadership characteristics that they bring to bear, which is judgment, which is character, which is integrity, which is a focus on what really matters for the customers, for the employees, for the organization, the focus on values, etc. So I think the people who are able to operate in that construct, right, the learning, innovation, experimentation, with a set of things that are timeless, I think those are the people that I think are going to be able to thrive and succeed.
I'm just continuing to enjoy this conversation, Ashutosh, and I'm so thrilled that you've accepted to come talk to us in our conference. Tell us what excites you to come join us in Long Beach.
Well, I think a combination. I think one, I go back and say that I'm genuinely uh, grateful. And I think if you had asked me, if you'd asked the 16-year-old version of me and said, would I likely make it to IIT? I think I'd have given myself like less than a 30% odd. I feel very grateful and very lucky to have been able to get it through IIT. So I think there's a constant degree of just gratitude around how I think about the alma mater. Secondly, I'd say I'd come to it with two other objectives. One is wanting to learn around what is happening because I think a number of IITians are doing very interesting things around the world. And second, with just wanting to reconnect. Hopefully, we'll see many familiar faces.
Yep. No, I would totally agree with you. Um, any advice you would have in general to business leaders such as me and others who are leading the company in summary in closing?
So, Sashi, I think I would go back and say that I think the times that we are living in are going to be some of those. We look back, are going to be some of the most exciting times that we will ever see, right? In terms of the rate of change, in terms of the pace of change. It'll create both what we call opportunities as well as risks, right? But I think that if I look at it, I think there is a natural tendency for all of us to get worried about saying what is the potential downside, and will technology go back and wipe out all the jobs? In my mind, this is also an opportunity of a lifetime for us to think about saying, how do we start to think about, you go back and as the example of a general purpose technology that's going to have this much of impact. How do we start to think about problems that we can't even think about that can be solved and start to solve those problems today? I think there's something which I've read about recently, which is this idea of humane leadership, which is this thing about how do we solve it through the lens, not just of individuals, but how do we do it with the lens that's eventually, as a society, I actually do not believe in the predictions that we're all going to be without jobs or something. It's going to be a different category of jobs over the
Yes.
last hundred, if you look at the track record of technology since the invention of the combustion engine, technology has always created more jobs, but it has the nature of the jobs has changed. So, I don't think we don't have the capability today to visualize exactly what those jobs are going to be, but how do we go about creating it and using that to get us to a very, very different place? So I'm actually, on balance, I'm very pragmatic about the fact that we will have a number of challenges on our hand. I'm also optimistic about the fact that we'll work through those challenges. And collectively, I think this is something that we all have in front of us. No one individually will have the answers, but collectively we'll find it. And that's my reason for optimism.
Very well said. Maybe some fun things about Asutosh. Tell us one fun things about Asutosh. One thing.
So, I used to be, I'm still am quite a big cricket fan.
Okay.
And, I still follow all the games and so on.
I do too, by the way.
Yeah. When we were in IIT, I think the rub on me was that, I was more competitive than being good. So every time we used to play in the IIT, in the wings of the IIT and all of that, somehow by some fortune, when I was declared out, I used to believe that I was never out, right? I was never so. That used to be a bone of contention. And the rumor is at one point in time, we got into a heated debate with some of my wingmates, and what landed up happening. And I think there's probably a lesson in here. The two lessons in here. One is courage, which is
Mm-hmm.
actually, we only had one cricket bat. I took that cricket bat, went into the room and locked myself up. So that is lesson number one, courage, with like 20 IITians there. The second one is the humility, which I think I continue to learn to this day, just the recognition that I wasn't very good as a cricketer. But I think
Yeah.
one time.
Yep. Do you like Indian music or American or both?
I'm learning how to sing Bollywood music. I think
Oh,
that's
you are.
what
I
I think.
write poems and songs, by the way. I don't sing, but I write.
Fantastic. I don't have the capability to write, so I'm learning. I'm practicing taking singing lessons every weekend now.
Are you serious? Really? Are
Yeah,
you going to, can you give us the glimpse of it?
no, I
Even a
think
one sentence?
it's too embarrassing right now.
Okay. Any particular song you like?
I think, many different versions of it. I think, I like ghazals a lot.
Jagjit Singh or any other?
Yes.
All of them.
Uh,
We
Rahat,
should
Rahat
set up a
Fateh Ali Khan, Rahat
Raj
Fateh,
Flair. Yep,
favorite, yeah.
yep. By the way, Amjad Ali Khan will be there in our conference on Thursday night.
Awesome. Great.
Uh, if you like classical music, he will be there on Thursday night. So Asutosh, I really had a lot of fun. You're a wealth of knowledge from the strategy, leadership, transformation, AI, and we are super excited to have you join our conference. And thank you for your time today, Ashutosh and everyone. I'm Shashi Tripathi once again with Ashutosh, senior partner at McKinsey. He will be there in our conference, speaking in person. He will be there. You guys can meet him, talk to him on all pointers we talked today. Amazing human being. The conference is from April 22nd through 25th in Long Beach, California. And our website is iit2026.org. Please go register. And in closing, Ashutosh, do you want to say final words?
Yeah, look forward to seeing you at the conference, Rashi, and many others.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.